This is Tom and Paula Graves from Light of Christ Radio with a story from our Light in the Dark series.
You're welcome to watch this video simply for the story, or you can use it as the basis of a small group study.
The small group study instructions can be found below the video in the More section.
Today we continue our series Light in the Dark as we look at Luke 23 to find light for our last hour.
Well, Paula, as we begin our context today, our conversation, let's look at our story.
Jesus ministered on earth for 3 years as he taught and healed, and he pointed to himself as the Messiah referred to in the Old Testament.
Well, the Jewish people anticipated that the Messiah would be a political ruler and didn't realize he would come twice.
So Jesus foretold his death to his followers, but they didn't understand that he had come to be the Lamb who would sacrifice himself for the sins of the world.
Our story takes place during Passover season. Jerusalem is filled with pilgrims celebrating.
And the clash between Jesus and the Jewish leadership comes to a head. The leadership sees Jesus as a problem to get rid of.
The Jewish leadership arrested Jesus and demanded the death penalty. Pilate, the Roman governor, can see that Jesus is innocent, but caves into pressure.
And so we have the story from the Word of God.
2 others, both criminals, were led out to be executed with Jesus. When they came to the place called the Skull, they nailed him to the cross.
And the criminals were also crucified, one on his right and one on his left. And Jesus said,
"Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." And the soldiers gambled for his clothes by throwing dice.
The crowd watched, and the leaders scoffed. He saved him others, they said. Let him save himself if he's really God's Messiah, that chosen one.
The soldiers mocked him too by offering him a drink of sour wine. They called out to him, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." A sign was fastened above him with these words, "This is the King of the Jews."
And one of the criminals hanging beside him scoffed, "So, you're the Messiah, are you? Prove it by saving yourself and us too while you're at it."
But the other criminal protested, "Don't you fear God even when you have been sentenced to die? We deserve to die for our crimes, but this man hasn't done anything wrong."
And then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom."
And Jesus replied, "I assure you today you will be with me in paradise."
By this time it was about noon, and darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. The light from the sun was gone, and suddenly the curtain in the sanctuary of the temple was torn down the middle.
Then Jesus shouted, "Father, I entrust my spirit into your hands." And with those words, he breathed his last.
When the Roman officer overseeing the execution saw what had happened, he worshiped God and said,
"Surely this man was innocent."
And when all the crowd that came to see the crucifixion saw what happened, they went home in deep sorrow. And this is a story from the Word of God.
If you are using this video for a small group application, after you have watched the video, try retelling the story from what you have heard.
Then read the text. Discussion questions are below the video in the More section.
We hope you'll learn something from this story to apply to your everyday life.
And may you be blessed.